Welcome to Speaking of Spirituality, a podcast to share about the path of spiritual awakening. I'm your host, Amelia McLean, and I am so excited to be showcasing some inspiring stories and exploring some interesting topics, all under the umbrella of spirituality. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So this week we're talking about what it means to surrender into the unknown and relying on your inner resources, the inner knowing and guidance system. So what comes up for you when I mention that topic?
Slowing down is really what first comes to mind. And this was something that took me a long time to figure out in my own self-care journey, and allowing myself to explore what it really means to surrender into receiving, what it means to actually receive nourishment. And to me, this is a big part of self-care. And a lot of us that are new to self-care, this is the biggest block to really being able to anchor in a self-care routine and lifestyle that really nourishes and fills our cups up, which is really the idea of self-care. And there's a lot of blocks that end up coming up when we finally get a chance to slow down. So when we slow down, often we have to go through discomfort before we can really get through the other side of what it means to really feel nourishment and receive energy through self-care. And it took me about 20 years to really figure out the magic of surrendering. But once you start to surrender, what a lot of people don't talk about is that you literally are surrendering into an abyss. So when you start a self-care practice or a journey into really exploring what is good for us, it means we have to actually start reconditioning our brains, because what we start to find is all the beliefs that society has told us about being selfish to take care of ourselves, to put our needs before others. And this is really big with women in particular, because women are taught that our role is to care for others, care for the home, and also manage all these masculine qualities as well, like having a job. And so women now in particular are drained. And I'm not saying just women are, because men are too, because men are being held to different standards now in modern day society than they have been before. So we have these interesting new dynamics and these new roles of what it really means to be an empowered woman, what it really means to be an empowered man. And a big part of that is just learning how to nourish our cups enough to where we have enough energy to still take care of the people around us, or take care of our home, or take care of our work responsibilities, take care of our community. And if we're not nourishing our cups, we're just depleting ourselves. And then we get into the state of burnout. And that's where we see a lot of people in right now, especially caregivers and healers in particular. So whether you're in a holistic healing community or a more like mainstream healing community, there's burnout, and we see it across the board. And so it's nice to start talking about and bringing these conversations out about what it really means to start reconditioning what we have been programmed to believe around self-care and nourishment and taking care of ourselves, and what it means to actually put ourselves first. And if we can do that, it's really amazing. When we put ourselves first, it's so much easier to take care of the people around us who rely on us.
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad that I came into my self-care practice in this knowing that you're talking about the importance of self-care before I became a mom, because I have that, that groundwork, or is that the right term?
Yeah, that foundation.
Not firing at optimal capacity today. But yeah, that foundation is so important, because it does, allow me to be a better mom and a better wife and just a better person in general. And I like to think about too how different the world would be if everyone thought that way, if we really valued the self-care as like the most important thing, and actually to see, because I also see self-care ultimately as you actually are doing everyone else a favor also
Yeah.
by taking care of yourself first. because then you can be a better mom and a better wife and a better whatever, better everything, just a better person in general. So it's like you're really doing everyone else and the whole world a favor, and the whole universe, if you can go that far, because everything is connected in the quantum field. So it's like when we take care of ourselves, we're actually taking care of everybody. That was like a huge shift for me, and
Yes.
allow myself the what we in our society would think of as the privilege to have that time,
Mhm.
which is really, it should be like, yeah, foundational.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't like to look at self-care as a privilege, even though there are types of self-care that are. And this is where, like, in my journey of self-care, I started to realize I was like, you know what? Self-care is actually a mindset. It's not what, there's a element of it of what we're spending our money on and what we're doing, because there is that exchange of energy for nourishment, so sometimes we do have to spend money in order to receive something. But generally speaking, self-care really is a mindset. It's a mindset of where you're just checking in each moment and honoring your needs, right? And honoring your own capacity in each moment. So there may be a moment where I have a larger capacity to tolerate things that may irritate me, or things that may not be in alignment with me. I may be able to tolerate something more certain days than others. That doesn't mean on these days when I don't have a full capacity that, I'm not necessarily taking care of myself, right? I had to start shifting that because there are times when I didn't have much of a capacity and I felt so drained and I felt so exhausted. And I'd be like, I would almost judge myself, like we're taught to almost like, well, why am I so exhausted? What am I doing wrong? And then that rhetoric will sometimes come in. And it's like, I had to start shifting that too. And so to me, that's where I was like, you know what? Self-care really is this mindset of I can just have a bad day. That's okay. I can have a day where I'm tired. That's okay. How do I meet my tired needs right now?
Yeah.
How do I meet my sad needs when I'm feeling sad? Or a memory comes through that might bring up some grief for me, because I've had to deal with a lot of grief, especially the last couple years. And so when things like that come to me, instead of spiraling into, you know, the pain of that, I can honor, yes, there's a part of me that still feels hurt about this. How can I breathe through that? How can I support this part of me? And as soon as I check in with that part, it's like this empowered part of me is coming through. So what's really cool is sometimes we get afraid to connect to these negative feelings or what we might associate as low vibing feelings. But the thing is they're there. They're part of the human experience, and we are spiritual entities, living in this body. And so we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And it's that human experience that allows us to evolve spiritually. So
Mhm.
if we don't honor all of our human emotions, including the quote unquote bad vibing ones,
Mhm.
we're not going to actually evolve spiritually. So what I had to figure out was, how do I still honor these low vibing feelings that are sometimes not considered spiritual or in alignment? How do I honor them and still maintain my spiritual integrity and still maintain my spiritual purpose and still honor the growth of my spirituality in my practice and who I am? And so what that took was always knowing that when I'm connecting to a hard feeling, that I can connect to that feeling through my empowered self.
Mhm.
And that is the inner resourcing, right? That's when we're connecting to our authenticity, our trueness, who our spirit really is. And we bring that through and we nourish and meet the needs of the parts of us that are human. And we do that through validation. We do that by allowing that part to feel seen, feel heard, and we check in with it. What do you need?
Yeah.
And we meet that need. And to me, this is what self-care is. Self-care is always checking in. It's not always the massages and going to the spa. To me, it's connection. Self-care is connection. It's connection to yourself. It's connection to your body. It's the practices that allow us to connect to the self and connect to the body. It's practices that allow us to connect to our environment and other people. right? So self-care to me is like everything.
Mhm.
It's all of our relationships, it's our experience, it's our environment, and it's how we navigate through all of that.
Yeah.
It's how we navigate through the journey of the human experience.
Mhm.
So it's a mindset.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad you circled back around to the mindset piece because that was essential for me also in this change that I went through in my life of, looking at things differently and feeling about things differently and navigating differently was like that I really had that same realization of that it's a mindset. It's every single moment can be an act of self-care. That was like the thought that
Mm.
I started to have that, and it was at that time, it was more thinking about like things that I have to do, like chores, because I used to really dread doing chores, but
Mhm.
I actually started to see it as a self-care time because really I want to have a nice clean environment. I want to have clean dishes. I want to have clean laundry and a clean floor and a
Yeah.
clean home. And so I started to see those monotonous, boring, whatever things people really usually don't like to do
Mhm.
as actually a positive self-care time. And then as I got more comfortable with doing chores and actually enjoying it, it became more of a meditative thing as well. And time for, well, now that I'm a mom too, it's like it's kind of time to relax, even though that sounds so absurd. Because
It's
chores,
decompressing.
yeah, chores usually feel like work to people, but which if you're working all day, obviously it's like it does feel that way, but with a child, a young child really taking so much energy, it's like okay, doing the dishes and folding laundry is actually kind of relaxing for
Yeah.
me. And if I can be alone and do that, that's like even better.
See, and that's the thing, that's the mindset right there, Amelia, because if we look at it as something that's taking from us, of course, then when we do these activities, we're depleting our energy, right? Because we're giving our energy into like the abyss. If we're thinking about a resentment around having to do this, or we're doing it begrudgingly, like we really are actually creating a lot of distance from the joyful experiences that we could be having. Right. And it's the joyful experiences that's one way of nourishing our cups. Right. So if we can find joy in just these present moments and the gratitude too, and this is where it's like, I get to be grateful that I have so many clothes that I have to wash and clean, and how grateful I am that I have a washer and dryer and I'm not having to go to the laundromat, and these little things that even though they feel like they could take away, like we really actually have a lot of conveniences in our modern day chores now that we didn't used to have, right? And so it's like when I have to do something like chores or something that's mundane, it's like, well, how can I make this activity nourishing for me? Well, what do I need right now? If I'm pent up in anxiety, like I'm like dealing with a lot and I'm like, okay, but I have to do all this stuff. Maybe I actually put down some slow healing music and some sound healing frequencies, take some breaths, do a little smudging first, and then clean, right? Or sometimes I'm like a little sluggish and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really have to do this stuff, but I'm like not feeling it. Well, what can I do to start feeling it? Well, maybe I put on two songs that I love and I get loose and I dance first and I shake it out and I get the blood flow moving. And when that music's off, I put on a new playlist and now all of a sudden I'm ready to bust out my chores, right? And so I love that you brought that up because that's a great example of how we can take an activity that we have to do,
Mm.
right? And we can just check in with us, well, what do I need? Do I need to feel more energy around committing to this and following through? Or am I so anxious and distracted and scattered that I can't even focus on completing this task? And that's when you bring in a tool or practice that can reset you even in as little as like 1 or 2 minutes and or 4 minutes if you put on a couple of songs, and you can be ready to complete the task and nourish your cup at the same time.
Mm-hmm. The mindset, this conversation is like so expanding for me right now because I'm just having these like realizations about stuff even more deeply, than in a different way. But like the mindset is so important, and it's like that is how we are creating our reality in the present moment is through our the way that we're choosing to view things. And if we're choosing to view it as this horrible, monotonous, boring chore, then it's like that's your creation of this awful experience that you're about to have. But if you're like, yay, I get to do chores and can take care of myself and my environment, and that feels good, then it's like, then you've just created this wonderful experience.
But I will have to say, I have to honor how hard it is when you are in a state of overwhelm or when your nervous system goes into freeze response. So people who have a response that's more like a fight or a flee response, they can tend to sometimes bust through tasks pretty quickly because they're in fight or flight mode. And so they utilize that fight response to burn through a task, but they're not being mindful or present. They're that type A personality that's just busting through and getting that to-do list done when they're stressed out. Because there are a type of personality that can do that. When they're stressed or overwhelmed, they can actually boom, 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 boom. It may not be done with intention. It may be done sloppy, but it's done,
Yeah.
right? And then you have another type of group of people, if they've dealt with more trauma or more negative reinforcement throughout their lives, or just depending on their constitution and their soul purpose and journey and what they're learning in this life, they may actually go into freeze response. And when you're so overwhelmed, you go into freeze response, you actually don't have the container or the capacity or the resources. Or actually, let me rephrase that. You do have them, you just don't know how to access them because all this is within. But if the overwhelm is so strong in that freeze response, because we can't always govern how our nervous system responds because it is primitive, it's conditioned. So we don't always have control over how the body is responding to our environment. And that's where we have to just take the step into being willing to surrender into the work, coming back to surrender, and being willing to go through the journey of the discomfort and use the tools that you can use that now we have neuroscience validating all these practices that we've had for thousands of years that humans have evolved. That's the thing, is humans have evolved knowing how to regulate their nervous systems. We have kind of forgotten that, right? Because we have become more disconnected from our bodies and our environments. And so as we start to circle back to these practices that we have really known and that are kind of in our DNA, they're in our bones, we can actually regulate the nervous system in a way that allows us to be able to take these steps into self-care that we've been talking about. So if there's anyone who's watching and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I wish I can get there too, but I'm just so overwhelmed, there's no way I can even appreciate doing laundry right now. I've got 7 loads of laundry. How can I appreciate that? And that's where you just have to breathe and through. And that's where you have to rely on community support or like, courses and programs like stuff that we do where we can come in and bring in that container for people. And there's resources that allow them to get just a little bit more regulated. Because when you can get just a little bit more regulated, you can be like, oh, I can just take this one step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I tend to get I guess stuck in the like I guess you'd call it egocentric mindset of like forgetting that, not everybody is experiencing exactly what I'm experiencing or thinking the way that I'm thinking. I think a lot of us get stuck in that, we just assume that like everybody thinks the same way. But yeah, and I'm definitely like not a type A personality.
No.
I forget that, yeah, not everybody has that way of being.
Well, and I think after COVID in particular, where we see a lot more freeze response than we used to see. More people are shut down than we used to be. Like the whole experience of COVID, whether we really want to like acknowledge it or not, had such a detrimental impact on everyone's nervous systems that we see a lot more freeze response than we used to see before. And then we have all this collective crazy stuff too, and that's obviously not helping because it's putting people into a survival response.
Mhm. Let's talk about some of the tools that people can use because I know both of us have, yeah, really powerful tools that, so if someone is experiencing the fight or flight or freeze
Mhm.
responses that you're mentioning, obviously breathing is like
Yes.
one of the most powerful things people, and such an easy thing to do, but it's like it's funny because it's like something that we're always doing all the time, but it really needs to be more of an intentional breath work. um so how can we breathe more in a way that will allow us to calm the nerves and to be more focused in the present moment?
Yeah, and for me, like when I think about breath work, I think of it as not only just intentional breathing, but just tuning into like what is the experience of my breath? Because of course we're all breathing all the time, but are we actually paying attention to how it feels? Like what does my body do when I take a deep breath in? It's like, well, my shoulders rise, my lungs expand, my diaphragm drops. Like I can feel all these things, but honestly, when people take a breath, if they haven't done intentional breathing, they don't even feel these things. They're not tuned in quite enough because our minds are on our to-do list and on what's out here. And so when people are new to breath work, they don't recognize the power of the breath yet, because it's not that they don't know the power of the breath, is they don't understand the power of the intentions of tuning into the breath. That's really what it is. So we can we can bring the awareness from out here, which is what we're trained to do and conditioned to do, when we can bring that awareness back into our physical body. And the thing is a lot of us are checked out of our bodies because that is a protective mechanism of the mind. So if we carry shame in the body in particular, and it doesn't have to be shame over the physical body and how it looks, but emotions are carried in our body. So if we're dealing with any type of shame and that's being stored in our body, if we're dealing with any type of lack of self-worth or any kind of limiting beliefs, any kind of trauma or memories or things that have happened to us, that's all stored in our bodies, right? So when we take a breath in, the reasons why most people don't tune into their breath is because we have to actually tune into all the stuff that we're carrying inside of our bodies.
Mm.
And that's really scary for people. So this is where having some simple practices where you use your breath in a certain way through guidance, or you use a certain posture or hold where you hold your body a certain way. You hold certain neural lymphatic points or acupressure points, or me, I like to use tapping. And so you use your breath with a touch and hold while you're holding an acupressure point. What you're doing is you're actually sending signals into the body that you can feel safe to tune into your breath. Because if people don't feel safe to tune into their breath, they're going to just do regular breathing and not be connected to their bodies. So sometimes it might be more than just breath work. It might be more of like, let's hold a point together. Let's tune into our breath and know that we're going to be connecting to something, but that it's safe to do so and you're okay to do so. Right. And there might be beliefs that come up. And that's where working with a practitioner can be really helpful. So if you do have so much trauma in your body that the idea of connecting to your breath is too much, then that's when you do want to work with a trauma-informed practitioner. And
Mm.
this is where I love working with people myself, because this is what brings me so much fulfillment in my work, is where I can see someone access their own inner resourcing and feel safe to be able to connect to the emotions that they're carrying inside their bodies and process them and integrate them in a way where they actually feel empowered. And when I get to work with someone and see that journey, to me, I'm like, wow, this is incredible, to guide someone into tapping into their own empowerment, which to me is just feeling safe being who we are. And that means also being safe connecting to our human experiences, including the bad things that have happened to us.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about the sessions that I offer too. I was just realizing as you were talking that we're really essentially we're helping people do the same thing.
Hmm.
It's tapping into those stuck energies in the body like you're saying, and then to be able to work through them and release them and to feel safe doing so. And that reminds me also of like it's what comes up, yeah, when you're sitting still, when you're being quiet. And I realized recently that that's what happens when you're first learning how to meditate, is
Hmm.
that you're doing that. You're sitting still. And that's probably why meditation is so intimidating for a lot of people and they don't want to do it at first. But it's like it's not like that forever.
No. And this
It's
is why I like to teach movement meditation, because meditation doesn't have to be sitting.
right. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be Zen, doesn't have to be transcendent. Like it doesn't have to be all these labels of meditation that we have. We can sit and breathe in meditation. And then if we feel an ache or a pain, like you can stretch, like you can move through it and then you breathe into the stretch, and that's the real good breath work there, is like when you can connect to something and then you can just like ask about, well, what does my body want to do right now? Like, how can my body release this? And you kind of like trust that. And of course, there's somatic movement. When you work with a somatic practitioner, they know how to stretch your body or encourage you to stretch it in a way where you're stretching the fascia tissue to release these energy holding patterns that we carry there. But our body already knows, this is the thing, is like our bodies already know how to release trauma. This is where we have to start learning to trust, right? And so part of the process of doing this breath work and these practices and the self-care and what I teach is it's actually exercising your intuitional muscle, your trust muscle, and as you continue to sit through a discomfort and be like, well, what does my body want to do right now? And you might be like, well, I want to do this, if you got a little ache on the side, and so you stretch up and then you like hold it and you breathe through it and you just breathe through it and you bring your awareness into that pain and you notice the breath coming in. And what I like to do is think of the breath coming in and the breath expanding it. So if you think of the breath like a gentle breeze, right? And when we send our awareness or a mind, that's where energy goes. And so if we put our mind in that area of discomfort, we're already sending energy there. We're sending blood flow there. We're sending information. Our immune system is kicking into gear, and actually our bodies are regulating and what we need to do to heal that area of the body just through our intentions. And we're that powerful healers that we can heal just through bringing our awareness to an area that feels uncomfortable. And then when you check in and the body stretches and you breathe into it, and that breath expands that feeling, and then you invite the body to release and relax when you breathe out, what you're doing is you're like exercising that energy, and it starts to move and drain or dissipate or shift into the way that it's meant to shift to clear out. It's so cool.
I just realized when you were talking about that that's why yoga is so powerful
Yep.
for people, and you don't even have to have the intention of healing. It's just happening because that's what you're doing when you're doing yoga. Because I remember, when I used to go to yoga classes, now I mostly do yoga on my own, but when I have time to do it. But the teachers would say things like, when you're in a really uncomfortable pose, feel that place in your body where it feels tight and breathe into it, like you're saying. That's exactly what they would
Yeah.
say. And then feel it release on the exhale. It's just so, I'm just having these like realizations right now that are like really profound, that are connecting things. And that's what I guide people to do in the sessions that I do. We breathe, we use the breath, and we breathe in energy into the spots where it's stuck. And then I'm just like, it's just so crazy because I'm just having these realizations of like everything, it's all connected. Like we're all doing the same thing. And what is the things that I see that are common among them all is there's energy stuck in the body, and we can breathe into it and we can release it.
Mhm.
It's like it's that simple, but it's also so
It's
complex.
simple but not easy.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yes.
It's simple but not easy. And that's a famous Taoist and Buddhist concept, right? Like just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy, but that's where we get strong. There's no growth without being pushed outside our comfort zone.
Mhm.
That's the thing, right?
Yes, and I this is another thing that I believe, that I wish that everybody had this belief that those things are, it's good for us to have those challenging experiences because it's the opportunity for growth, like you said. And it's unfortunate really that in our society, I think we've been trained to not enjoy the discomfort. I mean, nobody enjoys that. That's a weird way to say that. Like, we don't enjoy discomfort, but
No, but we can get comfortable in our discomfort. We can get comfortable with discomfort. That's, yeah.
and to see it as that opportunity for learning and growth. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And then that's the trust. So once again, that's surrendering into trust, because in order to trust, we have to also reinforce to ourselves through positive experiences. So sometimes it's just taking the leap. Sometimes it's just like, okay, I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to trust that it is going to feel better on the other side. And there's this beautiful thing that I love too about the subconscious that I hear a lot of people in the neuroscience community talk about, is that our subconscious is never going to reveal to us something that we can't handle in the moment.
Mm.
Because that's the beautiful thing about our mind. Our minds do protect us from things that we can't handle in the moment, which is why we go into states of dissociation and memory loss. Right. And so sometimes when you start doing this work, memories will come up that you forgot about. And it's like, that's because you're now ready to deal with it. You're strong enough, you're resourced enough. And so this is when someone can just come into the work knowing that, yes, it's going to be tough. Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable learning how to connect to my body and clear all these things that I've been carrying. But as I do so, I'm going to feel better, right? So as you do it once and you feel the results of the work that you're doing, all of a sudden you get that little prize, that instant gratification. You need instant gratification. We are on a road of that. So we do have to work with that, right? So this is where it's like it is beneficial to work with someone like you and me, where we've been practicing this for years, if not decades, where we've worked out these kinks and we can actually come in and support someone and show them. Like, we get to be the examples that get to show people who haven't done this work that, yeah, it's gonna be fucking hard. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. You're gonna go through death and rebirth. And then guess what? When you think that you've born through the ashes and you're living life again, you're gonna die again. You're gonna die inside again over and over and over again. And that's okay, because that's what it means to be human. Right.
Mhm.
And it's what we do to get through those death moments, these moments of hardship, these moments of challenges. It's what we do to get through those that really set the foundation for us really being able to grow and move forward. And as we continue, it's a spiral. So we're always just going to be spiraling through life. And what I love too is the longer we do this work, the longer we see the patterns of, you know, just because we've done this work for a long time doesn't mean we're not going to get knocked on our ass. Like, just because we're resourced doesn't mean we don't get floored. I got floored during my separation. I got floored when my brother died. I do this work and I do lots of self-care and I meditate every day, but that doesn't mean that it didn't fucking suck for me to go through these human experiences.
Right.
Right. And so just to like share with everyone, like, this is literally a journey. And we can go through this journey feeling like shit all the time, feeling depleted, feeling tired, feeling exhausted, not feeling like we can have connection, feeling like we're irritated and snapping at our kids, not having joyful experiences, stressing out over everything. And this is, very common. A lot of us have been in these states or are in these states now. And that is also okay. But it's also not okay,
Mhm.
right? It's okay to feel like we're going through hardships, but it's not okay to stay stuck in these hardships. And this is where we really do need to take these steps and trust and surrender and feel empowered enough to be like, okay, if I just take this step, if I just move through and I just know it's still going to be uncomfortable, but it's not going to be any more uncomfortable than what I'm going through right now, not feeling resourced. It's
Mhm.
just going to be very intense. Right. But then once you move through that intensity, you actually tap into something so much more beautiful. And then you have that beautiful resourcing and that strength to continue to come back and continue to do the work and continue to keep evolving and growing. And then all of a sudden you notice that, hey, I'm actually doing really great as I'm navigating all these hardships. And I'm feeling really resourced. I'm feeling empowered and I feel like I have energy and I can do what I need to do. I can take care of the people I need to take care of. I can take care of my home and my work, and I can have joyful experiences as I'm navigating all this. And to me, that's the reward.
Yeah.
That's the reward, is
Yeah.
not feeling the ongoing discomfort of what it means to not do the work.
Right. Yeah. And then because it actually becomes more uncomfortable years down the line when the stuck energies in your body manifest as a physical ailment.
Mhm.
Because that's
Yeah,
what
or you're just ruining the relationships around you too because you're not nurturing your relationships. Because if you're not nurturing yourself, how do you nurture your relationships? Right. So this is why you see people getting divorced and marriages not working out. And why you see family falling out, friends falling out, and people just not feeling like they have strong community.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And I like that you mentioned the tough times that we go through because yeah, there's like this idea or this false idea of before when people see people on the spiritual path that are not there themselves, they think, oh, that person's got everything figured out. Their life is perfectly wonderful and nothing bad ever happens. That is definitely not the case. It's actually that you have the tools then to navigate those challenging times with more ease and grace and get through them more maybe, I don't know, maybe more quickly, or whatever, maybe not more quickly, but you have the tools to at least process what you're going through in a more positive way versus just stuffing it down like you always have and
Yeah.
then becoming sick years down the line.
Yeah. Or either being judgmental and critical of yourself of what's going on in your life too. Like when my brother died, like, yeah, I had to stop working for a while. Like I had to let things go. I had to let my house go. And, as much as I want to keep my house clean, circling back to that, like sometimes self-care is also giving yourself permission to be okay with your house not being clean, right? And giving yourself permission, being like, it's okay that I don't show up for this. It's not, I'm not going to disappoint anyone. And if I am disappointing them, they're not the right person for me in my life.
Yeah.
Right? Because, if they actually know what I'm going through, then they would respect and have grace for me and allow me to have grace for myself and being okay with having to take an extra day off or slow down or honor my grief and honor my process. So that's a big part of it too. But I will have to say, I am privileged in the fact that I've created that environment, but I have spent 20 years for myself creating that environment for myself. My work, is very much self-care based, and so it's like for me, I will say that like I don't have that 9 to 5 job. I'm not a nurse. I'm not like, I don't have a job that demands that much from me. I do work with clients. So yes, like when I'm with my clients, I'm so present with them and they have my attention. But at the same time, it's not life or death if my kid is homesick and I have to call and cancel my clients. And that's for me what self-care is like when I have to have grace for myself and my situation of allowing myself to just be okay with not having to have expectations or meet anyone else's expectations, except what do I need right now? What does my kid need right now? He's home. I can put everything else on the back burner and that's okay. And so to me, that's a big part of this journey is you're actually creating an environment for yourself that allows you to have that grace, to have that compassion, have that acceptance, to be able to know where you are at in the moment and honor your own capacity and not try to push yourself beyond that capacity to meet anybody else's expectations.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I've been doing the past few days because I'm on my moon cycle right now and my energy goes way down along with my mood. And so I have created this little schedule for myself of like, okay, I have to clean the floors at least once a week because we have a dog and I have a husband who's always covered in dirt. And so there will be dirt all over everything if I don't clean the floors at least once a week. And that is usually on Friday. But this week, I have not done it yet. And now it's Sunday afternoon. And that's okay though, because I need
Yes.
rest, I needed to like take a few days and be like, you know what? Actually, I don't really feel like I have the energy to do all that right now, and I don't have to do it. I'm the one that created the schedule for that in the first place. So, the floors and everybody will be fine with a little bit more dirt for the next few days until I have the energy again, till I can check in with myself again and be like, okay, do I feel like I can do that right now? And it won't be like pushing me to my limits. Yes, okay, I'm gonna do it, and that feels good.
Mhm.
And I'm just so glad, like I said, that I have this awareness and this understanding so early in my time as a mom and just in my life in general and as a wife. And yeah, and I want to try to like bridge the gap between when people are not there. How can they get there to that, having that time to check in with themselves, because not everybody even thinks about that, about just taking a moment to check in and say, how am I feeling? Not most people, I would say probably most people, the average person doesn't do that ever. So yeah, what would you say for how we can kind of bridge that gap? And is it even necessary to try to bridge that gap? Because I also, part of me feels like people will come to this way of thinking in their own time. It's not really something, I guess this is bringing me to the, just what's happening on the planet with the raising of the vibration of the planet and the ascension process that we're going through. Like I've been shifting out of this feeling of like we need to help the people who are not awake yet. We need to help them, but really we don't have to do anything to try to help people get there because they will get there. It's
Yeah.
like we're here now and we have these tools that when people are coming looking for them, then we will be here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that there's now less of a gap now with um, access to mental health information. I think people now are so on board with learning what it means to actually support themselves on a complete holistic level. And, our Western medical model system has been based on a separation between mind and body. Right. So that's how our physicians have often been trained. There is a separation from mind and body. So they treat it separately. So when you go in to treat the mind, that gets treated by a different doctor than going in and be treating the body. Well, that's very much just our Western modern day model. Right. And so ancient healing has always been based on an integration of a relationship between the mind and body. And now this is being discovered by Western medicine. And so the beautiful thing is yes, we've had yoga, we've had Tai Chi, we've had Qigong, we've had various different energy modalities for thousands of years that are in our DNA and in our bones. It's in the collective energy, right? And now Western medicine is finally starting to validate what we have known. Right. And so as more information comes through social media and just the outlets that people have access to now, we have access to so much information. And there's this huge movement now for mental health and emotional health. And this new recognition that, hey, there's not a disconnect between the mind and body. In fact, what is going on in our mind is actually affecting our physiological bodily functions, like very much so. Like it's amazing that our thoughts actually have effect on the expression of our DNA. And most people don't know this. Most people don't know that our thoughts affect the way our DNA is expressed. And we now have science that's starting to validate this. And so the thing is we part of this ascending energy, even part of this whole idea of Pluto being transitioning into Aquarius, this whole new era actually opens up our access to this information. We have this whole new younger generation that's so much more open-minded. So we are seeing a collective shift. And we're in that in-between stage of, yes, people are coming on board, and we see the waves of people coming in and embracing holistic health. And that's only going to continue to grow, which is beautiful. And so that's part of this ascension energy. Yes. So we don't have to do much. All we have to do is keep living our lives and keep sharing it. And when the divine timing is right for them, they come across the information. Maybe not from you and me directly, because there's so many of us out there. And that's the thing, as long as we keep bringing this energy into the collective, that collective energy is only going to continue to ripple out and touch more people who haven't discovered this yet. And then they get to start the journey. And then maybe they're not meant to start this journey in this lifetime too. And there's that. And this is where we're not God.
Yeah.
We don't get to interfere with anybody else's karmic patterns,
Yeah.
right? All we can be responsible for is our own.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is where we just come back into our own energetic contracts, and we don't impose energetic contracts on anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see spiritual people not knowing that they're doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is where we just stay in our own lanes.
Yeah.
Right. And when people are ready spiritually, they will come across the information. And then when they're really ready, they'll get excited about it. They're like, oh, wait a minute, that feels good. That I resonate with that. I'm curious about that. I want to learn more about that. Right. And that's how you know that something in alignment or something that is for your growth is now come into your energy field. Is when all of a sudden you have this sense of curiosity about it and this sense of like maybe hope or inspiration. So as long as we keep doing what we're doing, right, we get to inspire other people, and they will eventually, the people who are in alignment and the people who are ready will come, they'll hear us, they'll see what we're doing, they'll get curious, and they'll want more if
Mm-hmm.
they're ready.
Yes, yeah, I need to remember that more of like just doing the work myself is enough. I have this like feeling of I don't even know what it is. It's maybe
Probably a
it's
feeling of service. Probably. Is that what it is?
yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
excitement. It's like a, you know, yeah, I think it's service. That's a good way to describe it.
Because I
Um,
think that's why a lot of people go into what we do is we want to serve our community,
yeah, yeah,
but we want to serve the community that is entering into our fields. So this is
yeah.
where we don't have to force anything, right?
Right. Yeah. And right now I think I'm in a period of, this is my surrendering right now, actually. I've been surrendering into just where I'm at in the present moment. It's really been a lesson of surrendering into the present moment because I have a lot of excitement and high hopes and big dreams for the future. And that's really exciting to think about. But it takes me out of what is here right now and really being grateful for everything that I've manifested in this life already right now because I'm living part of my dream right now and I'm forgetting that when I focus so much on the future and but I'm really realizing too that I'm here right now to be Ilex's mom, and that's my main focus, and that's okay, and I want to be doing the spiritual work too, and that's really exciting for me. But it might not be my time to be doing that full time right. Well, it's definitely not my time. I don't have time to do that full time right now. And I don't want to be doing that full time right now, but um I have this like I really want to be helping financially with our family because I'm not able to really do that right now. And that is hard a hard pill for me to swallow because I really want to be able to help, especially because David really wants to be able to be with Ilex more, and he's just always working so hard. And but I just, so that's been my lesson of surrendering right now, is just to be grateful for where I'm at and to slow down, like you said, the first thing you said, to really just like slow down and like let it be okay that I'm just here right now in this role as mom, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
And I love that you brought up the whole, manifestation piece of like thinking about the future because I got caught up in that actually. I had to like check myself at one point when I felt like I was spending so much time thinking about my manifestations and visualizing. And that was part of the process. That was something I needed to go through because I needed to reinforce to my body somatically that yes, I can feel this and I can experience this, right? Even though it's not something I've experienced yet. So there is something to that process. But I found myself at one point kind of escaping my present moment and like relying on meditation as an escape
Mm,
from what I was dealing with in the present moment because I was like, well, if I'm feeling this way now, it's like, let me just go and manifest. Or I'm feeling stuck in my business now and I'm having a hard time accomplishing this. Well, let me just go do my manifestation work and I'll go like manifest, manifest, and manifest. And then I like called myself out on it. I was like, but you know what? There's like, if I actually really want to manifest my dreams, like, yes, there's lots of pieces to it. So there's the piece of the visualization, right? There's the piece of connecting to, is this possible? So that's where you have your expanders or you have people showing you that, yes, this is possible. But there's also the piece of aligned action, right? And if we're spending so much time thinking about the future or the planning part, we're not actually implementing, right? Or if we're spending so much time in the guided visualizations, we're getting stuck visualizing and thinking somatically what this is going to feel like if I achieve this, we're missing out on the present moment. And then the other piece of the manifestation is honoring what you've already had, because that's what reinforces the trust muscle. So that is the important piece. We're supposed to slow down and just be in the present moment. And that is such an anchor into what we call in for our growth and our manifestations, or however we want to be feeling and experiencing life. So that's such a beautiful piece. And we need to honor all these pieces. because they're all a stage that contributes to the manifestation process or to the growth process. It's funny because we have the whole manifestation term now, and I think a lot of people think about that as just like manifesting your dreams and manifesting wealth or manifesting your love, the love of your life. And to me, it's like it's just another term for creating what you want and meeting your needs, right? And so manifestation can be creating an experience or creating a feeling as well. So to me, manifestation might be just creating a feeling of safety inside my body. And I had to work on that. Like I couldn't manifest things that I wanted if I didn't feel safe in my own body. So for me, my first stage of manifestation was like, how does it feel? How can I feel safe in my body? How can I trust my body? How can I trust my intuition? Because I was told for so many years not to trust what my intuition was telling me. And so we have to kind of honor all these stages, including the stage of just being in the moment, slowing down, and being appreciative of what you have right here and now, even if it's a negative feeling. Like I love my sadness. And this is the other thing is we need to start loving these negative emotions. We need to start embracing them and honoring them. Because when you start connecting to these emotions really deeply, what you'll start to see, and not everyone is visual, like I'm a very visual person. So when I connect to my body, I see archetypes. I like figures come to me, colors come to me, symbols come to me. Like my brain, like well, all brains, all subconscious brains work with symbols. But when you start opening up the subconscious and connecting to it, symbolism just floods through you. And this is spirit talking to you, right? You're like channeling information. And I can go into a meditation and channel so much. It's really cool. But then like what do I use that information? Like how do I utilize that when I come back and I wake up, And so we have to really honor all these stages and honor these negative emotions, because when we connect to them, what we'll see is they're like little wounded parts of us. Like we'll see them show up as a visual representation of a part of us. And so once you connect to it, it makes it so much more personable. It's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, that anger. When you see what the angry part of you looks like, you have that personal connection of like, oh, wow, anger's not just, this scary emotion. It's like this wounded little child that has been repressed or suppressed or isolated and alone, and they're angry, right? And so when we can just sit there and like see that angry part of us and heal it through our inner resourcing and our inner empowerment and connecting to our present moment and our strength of who we are right now, and we go back in and we connect to these parts of us that are wounded or these parts of us that need healing and integration, all of a sudden it's like we can love them. No longer do we need to be afraid of our anger. Instead, we can be like, oh my God, I have so much compassion for you. It makes sense that you're so angry. You should be angry. That was a horrible thing that happened to you. That should have never been done to you. I
Mhm.
can't change that, but what do you need now?
Yeah.
Give it a hug, send them to the beach. And you visualize this. It's so cool. Like your subconscious is so amazing. You can connect to like this hurtful part of you and check in and see what it needs. Give it that need. Maybe it needs a hug. Maybe it needs to have a tantrum and yell and scream. Maybe whatever it needs. You just imagine that and you let that part of you have that. And then all of a sudden it integrates in a way that makes you have so much acceptance for all the parts of you. And that's how we get to this integration whole being.
Yeah.
There's this quote, like there's I'm not even gonna say it exactly, I'm gonna kind of paraphrase it, but like, there's no whole without the parts. Right. So we can't be whole if we're dismissing any parts of us, or if we're ashamed of any parts of us, or if we're scared of any parts of us. Right. So as soon as we can allow ourselves to be human and just connect to that human experience through spiritual resourcing, and that's where these visualizations and the meditations and the breath work and all that stuff really comes in to create that container, right? That's when the magic happens.
Yes, and that is really the inner alchemy. And you're talking about transmutation and alchemy, and that's how we can heal
Mhm.
become that new evolved version of ourselves is through that, like you said, the first thing you said was loving the sadness and the anger, and taking that negative experience and making it a positive experience. That is transmutation.
Yep.
I love that. That's awesome. Yes, and another thing that I've been on the topic of surrender and surrendering and listening to that inner guidance, which takes surrendering
Yeah.
to that. Um, for me right now, I've been really feeling this message of uh pausing on taking in information. I'm Since I've started on this like spiritual awakening journey, I've been so I'm just excited to learn about all of the things, and I want to know, for you finding the right information that resonates with me, of course, but I like to read about spiritual things and, watch videos about spiritual whatever. And I've been really um getting the message to like just stop taking in more information right now. And I think it's partially this is where the surrendering comes in, because my logical mind is trying to understand why am I getting that message, why am I be doing that. But it's like it doesn't really matter why. It'll come, it'll be revealed. But I think it's partially to integrate what I have been working on, what I've been learning, and in working through, and then also to strengthen that inner voice, because I think we, with the internet and social media, and the news and the media and all of that, like we're so focused on external information, getting information from outside of ourselves. And so to turn that off means to get the information from inside. So I think that's why I'm being directed to do that, is to strengthen my own inner guidance system.
Yes, and anytime we sit with anything, we get to digest it and assimilate it, right? So there's that process of the learning experience. And when we really sit with something, like you said, like we get to access what we know from within, right? And we get to become more intimate with the information, right? So we get to really know it. Right. There's one thing to like know something, but there's another thing to like inherently like know it and feel it, like know it in your bones, know it in your cells, like feel it inside your body. And that's the integration.
Mm.
Right. And that's where we really get to anchor in, and it becomes more of a skill. Right. Like we can take in knowledge, right? And it can just be facts or information. But if we don't allow that period of integration, it doesn't become an inner knowing, right? It just stays in the mind. If we want to anchor it in the body, we actually have to sit with it. What does it feel like to do this? What is it, like, and not just on an emotional level, but like, what does it feel like inside my body? Like, do I get butterflies in my stomach? Do I get little tingly sensations on the surface of my skin? Do the little backs of my hair stand up on my neck? Like, or the little necks or the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. So it's like all these little things, like, we can start tuning in, and that's the intuition. That's the sixth sense, right? I call it the sixth sense. We have our five external senses, right? And based off of how we're taking in information through the five external senses, that information actually wakes up the sixth sense, and the sixth sense gets activated and responds to that information. So the sixth sense is actually responding to the information we're taking in from our environment. And so that's what we need to learn how to trust,
Mhm.
because what we're taking in from our environment can be deceiving, right? And so this is where our intuition and our sixth sense and our inner guidance system is really where we want to be accessing um the trust. We have to come back to trusting ourselves. But the thing is, and this came up with a client, I had this amazing session this last week with a client. She does such beautiful inner child work, and we were connecting, but this time we didn't connect with her inner child. We actually connected with an adult part of her that was going through a very tough situation. And when we connected with her, that part of her couldn't connect to her empowered self. And it was interesting because that's one of the first times that that's happened to me in a session that I've led. Usually there's this connection, and her broken self from her past was so broken and hurting. And what came up was, I don't trust you. She said that, like, her old broken self told her empowered present self, I don't trust you. And that was the big aha moment. She dug up something so deep in her core beliefs because she was told by her mom that she wasn't trustworthy.
Oh.
And so all the messages she received from her mom her whole life was reinforcing to her that she shouldn't trust herself. So,
Mhm.
of course, now as this older woman, she didn't trust her intuition, and she was now seeing it manifesting in all the areas in her life, including when she's going to the doctors to get health support. And the
Mm.
doctors are dismissing her and gaslighting her. And I told her, I was like, this is all you not trusting yourself is showing up in your environment.
Mm.
And it was like this big connection for her. So what we did is we did healing around her trusting herself. And what happened was she got this new reframe and this new shift. And she's like, wait a minute, this whole time I actually was trusting myself. I just didn't know it. And I was like, yes, that was it. You were trusting yourself and you were going against the grain because you were told by everyone else not to trust what you were doing. But in fact, what you were doing is actually trusting yourself. So that is like the power of this work. I sat down with a woman, right? And we were start doing some healing around some stuff coming up now in the present moment. And we connect to that feeling, and it took her back to a feeling from 30 or 40 years ago. We start connecting to that. She realizes I don't trust myself, but then we tap on that and we sit with that. And she was like, wait a minute, I was trusting myself. I was just told not to trust myself. And she had this huge healing experience just by sitting with an uncomfortable feeling inside her body. But what that did is that shifted everything, is that made her feel more empowered coming back, because now she can be like, well, now I can trust myself when I go into the doctor to advocate for myself. And no, I will not let that doctor tell me I can't trust what my body is telling me. And yes, I will trust myself in this situation here in the present moment. And no, I'm not going to allow that person to dismiss me and my feelings. So she came back so empowered
Wow.
after being able to just connect.
Yes.
Yes, it's so good.
Amazing. I just want to say too that your work, the sessions that you offer are so special. And just those two sessions that I got to do with you was like so profound. And just recently when you were talking about the energy exchange for your work, the price that you're charging, it's like, and the whatever a little bit of judgment that people have been casting towards you about that being a lot for an hour, it's like it doesn't matter that it's an hour's worth of time. It's like you're paying for the healing that you're receiving, that is like amazing life-changing healing work.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you that. I just had that thought earlier today.
Thank
I
you.
was like, I don't know, taking a shower, thinking about talking to you, and I was thinking about your work, and like, it's like it doesn't matter that we whatever, a lot of people charge like whatever. You can charge however much you want, but
Well, what's crazy is I see practitioners charging like $400 an hour doing the work that I do.
because the realization that I had was that people get so stuck in, well, how much is that per hour? But that is
Yeah.
such an old way of thinking. Like, who
Yes.
cares how much it is per hour? It's not about the amount of time that you're spending. It's about how the healing that you're
Hmm.
receiving, and that the work that you're doing, that you're being guided um through with your sessions is profoundly life changing. That's the
Hmm.
important thing, not
Yeah.
how much time it takes. Um,
Right. And people can like spend, years going to like talk therapy, which is great. But if you're not using other tools and practices along with talk therapy, you're only going to feel validated. Right. And then you're actually refiring those neurons, just reinforcing how you were feeling. So it's like one of these things where like people will pay to years to try to get what you can achieve in one or two or four or eight sessions, right? So it's kind of like, it's interesting. It's like, it's how we value how we spend our money,
yeah.
first of all. And we are now just shifting into a mindset where we value transformation,
Mhm.
right? And it's interesting because I had EFT brought me into my own self-worth and helped me work through so many of my own money blocks. Right. And what I realized is like, I often was attracting people who didn't value investing in their self-care because I was taught not to value investing in self-care. And so it's like I had to work through so many of my own limiting beliefs to actually get to this point of like, oh no, yeah, no, this is what I charge. And if you can't afford it, I have scholarship opportunities, or I do like, because that's the thing is I do want everyone to have access to my work. So I do group work. And that's the thing about EFT is when we're trained to, well, one, we invest a lot into our training. If you're a certified practitioner, it's no joke what we go through to become a certified practitioner, because we get trained in all the different modalities. And then if you continue on and you do energy psychology training, like it's very extensive, and you have to do case studies and you have to work with mentors. And I have to renew my training and certification every 2 years. Like it's no joke what I have to do to invest in my ability to be a practitioner, and then the insurance and everything that goes with it. And so like, yeah, it's like, I don't, now it's like, I don't have a problem saying, yeah, I charge $125 a session. You can get 4 bundle sessions. And if you want to work with me, if you want to do inner child work, this is what it costs. And every single person who invests in it, they're like, wow, that was worth every single dollar. And I would actually pay more for this.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you find the right people and they're willing to actually go through that discomfort of the session, but then they come out the other side feeling amazing, and not just feeling amazing in that moment, but being able to feel that experience carry out in the future and continue to stay. And yet other things may come up that they have to work on, but that's the thing. We all have to do it. That's not out of the norm. And so, but every time you circle back to address something, you're more resourced, you have a stronger foundation, and you're basically peeling the layers of the onion to get to the core of what really needs to be worked on. And that's the ultimate goal of what we want to be doing, right? So it's like if we've been conditioned in a way, we have to decondition. And so that is peeling the layers of the conditioning. And also, I've found ways to be able to support people who can't afford to work one-on-one with me. And so that's why I do the group work, because that's what we're taught is when we go through our training is we're taught to uphold the value of the work that we do, and then offer volunteer sessions. So we can volunteer for our community. We can offer so many sessions for free or sliding scale a month to help people who need that resource, but who otherwise don't have the money to exchange. And I have my new online membership too, where people can work with me online through group tapping for like $33 a month. And so like, that's affordable for just about anyone. Like I don't really, like almost anyone can afford some kind of container support for that. And then I have an upgrade gold package member. This is my Phoenix Rising membership. So my silver Phoenix membership is just the online support and the group work. And then I have 20 slots for gold memberships where people can upgrade. And for $133 a month, you get to have one-on-one session with me. And so you have the group container for all the self-care and the support between sessions. And then you have one empowerment session with me a month. And that is so affordable. Like that is an investment into your health, your well-being. And so I kind of figured out a way. It took me a while to figure this out, but I figured out a way where I'm like, yes, I can still uphold my integrity of offering my package sessions, doing that real deep work with people, because with inner child healing and stuff like that, that's not a one session thing. Like you do have to like do a few sessions, and because you have to do your inner resourcing and there's different layers to it, and you have to circle back and reinforce the new programming so it really gets anchored in. And so I still will always do that because that's such incredible work. But now I've actually opened up an opportunity for people to get empowerment work in the container of a group setting and still have a one-on-one session with me, but maybe we just don't do it as continuous as a packaged meeting. So yeah, it's fun. I'm really excited about it because I feel like it's going to get this work out to more people, and it's going to be so much more easily accessible, and it's going to be fun, especially the membership, because then there's going to be all the giveaways and all the incentives and seasonal like, I don't like to use the word challenges, but I like to use the word incentives, but, like these fun things where we just get to do stuff together and learn and grow together as a community. And that's what we need. We all need connection.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on your new membership
Thank
platform.
you.
And that's so amazing. I had another question about, you're kind of going off on this tangent now because I just have questions about like when you did that work around, you said you did tapping around the money mindset. Is
Mhm.
that when you noticed your clientele base changing and
Yes.
their mindset about okay.
Yep, very much so, because we're always going to be attracting the people based off of how we're feeling inside. So when I had money blocks, I was attracting people who were critical of what I was being told, how I should value my work and what I should be charging. And honestly, too, like a lot of people don't recognize when we're practitioners like this, for every 1 hour of work that we're holding space for someone, we often have at least 2 hours of non-paid work, if not more. Because I create content. So I actually, for every 1 hour of work I'm getting paid, I have 4 hours behind the scenes that I'm not getting paid for. Right. And so it's like one of those things is like, so in the end, I'm really not making $125 an hour. And so it's like what you're paying me for is me running my business legitimately. There's a lot of expenses that go into being a professional practitioner and doing it right. And so that's what you're paying for too. You're also paying for me to stay on top of my trainings, right? And integrating these trainings because what I'm doing is also a lifestyle. So I live the life that I teach, right? And so yes, I create this container and this is what it costs for me to have this kind of life and this kind of work so I can provide this kind of service for my community. And it's
Mm.
amazing and it's beautiful. And if anyone has a problem with it, that's fine. They can go find another practitioner. And I'm just going to draw on the people who resonate with the work that I do and the people who value the transformation and sometimes it means just being exposed to the transformation to recognize what the value really is. And that's divine timing. That's divine timing. And that's out of my control.
Right, that's where we surrender again.
Yes.
Surrendering. Well, it was so nice to talk with you again about all of this stuff, and I'm sure we could continue on
I
and
know,
on
right?
forever.
We could talk for hours.
I always feel so we'll have to do this again around another topic or keep expanding on this because there's always so much more to say.
Yeah. Well,
Is
thank
there
you,
any
Amelia.
else, any other last little thoughts coming through anything else that you wanted to share about
No, just thank
everything?
you everyone for tuning in, especially if you made it to the end. I know that sometimes our podcasts go long, and so thank you everyone if you stayed through till the end, and I hope that you all found something just inspirational and something that give you a little hope and maybe a little excitement because this whole work is once you get through it, it's like it's this phrase I have. It's like I'm excited and delighted. Like I'm always just excited and delighted, and it's because I've done enough of the work to shift and integrate in a way that everything is just exciting and delighting, even the tough moments. And so I just hope that anyone who has tuned in feels that little seed within that, yes, you can have hope that you can feel excited and delighted about your challenges too if you create that container of safety for yourself.
Yes, beautiful. And we'll leave it at that. Well said. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Speaking of Spirituality. If you'd like to connect with me personally or book a session for Quantum Soul Alchemy, you can find me on Instagram at Ascending with Amelia. Have a beautiful day.